Hey guys, in this week's collection, we are talking about early intervention, and this is something that I feel really passionate about because I've seen how much early intervention and helping kids from a really young age, younger than you would typically think, and what that can mean for the rest of their life. I used to work for a nonprofit that worked with kids with mental health disorders, and a lot of times we would get referrals from teachers or from schools. So once kids reached elementary school and they were kind of able to see that there might be some struggles, whether that was physical, like occupational therapy, having a hard time gripping a pencil or writing correctly, or speech therapy, if it wasn't clear or they had trouble with maybe some comprehension stuff or just vocalizing, whether that was sensory processing disorder and they had a hard time adjusting to school and all the stimulation involved. Whether that was autism or ADHD or any of the other, there's many diagnoses that a child might receive. But if you can tackle some of those behaviors, some of those concerns, some of those potential problems before they become big problems, before you even hit school age, you can give your child such an advantage. And you can give yourself an advantage as well. You're going to get a little bit of peace of mind, and family life is going to become a little bit easier if you're addressing the things that are difficult for your child. So if you can catch those concerns before they turn into a ripple effect. Let's say your kid heads into kindergarten and they're dealing with some SPD, sensory processing disorder stuff, and they're really sensitive to noise, or they're really sensitive to the lights there. But noise, I feel like, is a common one, and they're there around their peers. Their peers are loud. Walking through the hallways or the fire alarm or anything like that, and your child reacts really poorly, and all of a sudden it starts to affect their peer relationships. If they're struggling to cope with the things that are bothering them, they're going to have trouble creating friendships, or they might start to be labeled as the weird kid or something of the sort. I feel like schools are doing a lot better job addressing those kind of things, and kids are doing a better job of that as well. However, you don't want to put your child in that situation. So if you can start even before school age, at the age of 2 or 3, and start helping to teach them those coping mechanisms that they're going to use throughout the rest of their life. And that's the thing, this behavior or these problems aren't going to go away. They're only going to get worse. They're only going to bleed into other areas of their lives. This is something that it's not just going to go away if you ignore it. Of course, there are phases that our kids go through that if you ignore the behavior, maybe it's just a phase and it'll go away. But when you're talking about these types of disorders, they're not going away. They're going to stick with your kid, and unless you figure out how to help them through and you figure out how to teach them how to cope with these things, it's not going to get better. So earlier intervention is so key to identifying what's going on and getting professional help. These people do this day in and day out. It could be as simple as giving you a turn of a phrase that really helps transition periods for your child, or giving you a special seat cushion, or a special fidget toy that really helps your child. It's about teaching them the importance of making eye contact when they speak, if that's something that they struggle with. It's teaching them the tools that they might, that in a typical situation, you or I might not think to teach a child that thing. So that's why you need to go to the professional. They do this day in and day out. They have some amazing resources and amazing tools, and some really cool tricks up their sleeves, I feel like. So if your child, a lot of parents fear getting that label from an early age. They don't want their preschooler labeled with something, and they feel like there's a big stigma attached to that. My response to a lot of that is the label is basically there for insurance purposes and for treatment purposes. The label is there so that you can have the funding to pay for these incredible services. The therapies, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, whatever it may be. That label is just kind of the formality. You do not have to share that with anybody if you don't want to. You don't, I encourage that you do, because I feel like we are trying to really reduce that stigma. But the point is, if the behaviors are there and the issues are there to validate that diagnosis, they're there. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's still the same thing. So, if I had a broken bone in my arm, but I choose to say it's not broken, it doesn't mean it's not broken. Do you know what I mean? Like, I still have a broken arm, and if I don't do anything about it, it's only going to get worse, and potentially much, much worse. So we need to treat mental health the same way, especially with our kids, to give them a better chance. The other thing is, it's a lot easier to get them help while they're young. It is a lot easier to drive to these therapies while they're young and not in school yet, and get them that help to really launch them and let them start off in kindergarten with, all the skill sets and the tools that they need. It's easier to drive them around when you don't have anything else to do all day. Even if your child is a little bit older, it's still easier to tackle things earlier on while they're still learning, while they're still trying to figure out who they're going to become, trying to figure out the world, the social world around them. If you can be there in those moments to help them through, it's going to make a big difference. And practically speaking, once they reach the age of 18, there's not a lot to offer them. So there should be, but there's not. So a lot of times these kids are aging out of a system, or once they turn 18, you as a parent don't have a say in what they do or don't do anymore. So while they're young, make sure that you do your research and get them the help that they need before, it sounds bad, but before they have a say in it, because they can't really refuse it if they're 3, 4, 5 years old. So I touched on it a little bit, but I want you to treat this the same way that you would treat a physical injury. Let's say I hurt my knee, I needed knee surgery, and then I need physical therapy afterwards to get back to the same point. We need to start treating mental health the same way, and with the same, there's a stigma. If I hurt my knee, I hurt my knee. If I'm on crutches, I'm on crutches. If I have to go to physical therapy, there's nothing, attached to that people are looking down at me for that. And it's the same way with mental health. If your child needs to go to play therapy once or twice a week, where's the harm in that? That's just what they need right now. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well is, if you can get them help early on, if you can face this head on and get them the help that they need, there's a good chance that they're not going to need that forever. Same way that, like, my knee would eventually heal. If I take the right steps, I'm going to get better sooner. If I put off surgery and I kept, walking around on my injured knee and I refused physical therapy, it's going to take me a lot longer to get to the point where my knee is functioning how it used to. It might never get back to that point. So it's the same way with mental health. Like, let's make sure that we're taking care of this problem before it spirals out of control. Let's make sure that we're tackling this head on and doing best practices. And if you're unfamiliar with that world, there are a lot of resources. I know for us locally here in the area, there's a lot of resources available to parents to either figure out what steps they need to take to even get started. I know it can be overwhelming. There's always, just like anything medical, there's always a lot of paperwork and all of that, and a lot of visits, and maybe comparing different therapists, but I encourage you to stick with it. It'll be worth it. Help your kid through this so that your life and their life will be better down the road. Good luck.